everyone, and welcome to The Right Stuff, CMC's series of talks with writers and creators about what it takes to get a kids show up and running. My name is Dilpreet Kawalia, and I'm a screenwriter and puppeteer. Today, I'm excited to be talking with the lovely Tim Bain. I was lucky enough to meet Tim during a writer's room and see his storytelling skills right before my eyes. Tim is an award-winning writer who's written across amazing shows like Bluey, Odd Man's Morph, PJ Masks, Thomas and Friends, Bob the Builder, Pip and Posy, and Go-Jetters, and many, many more. Not only is Tim a writer, he's an executive producer and the creator of the ABC hit show called Kangaroo Beach, which has recently been greenlit for season 2. Let's look at a quick clip of Kangaroo Beach.
Welcome to Kangaroo Beach! We're here for an awesome summer training with our lifeguard heroes. Woohoo! Swimmers in distress!
On it like a seagull on a chip.
Rose to the rescue!
So Tim, whenever you see clips of Kangaroo Beach or you catch it on TV, you must have so many memories that come back to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always quite wowed by how good it looks, because it just started off as, terrible little squiggles in my notebook as ideas, and then the animation that they've done on it is incredible, including the beautiful blue water and the waves. And that was always going to be the headache of this show, was you're always told don't do water in CG shows, and the animation team proved they could do it and do it beautifully. It's I think it's like hand drawn almost, frame by frame water, which is a huge nightmare of course for animators, but it looks great. And it makes me really proud, and to know that it's being watched by kids all over the globe now, from what started as little squiggles in my book.
That is so wonderful, and you're right, it's so nice and colourful. And Tim, I was wondering, can you talk a bit about your experience prior to Kangaroo Beach, please?
Sure. How did I get into writing? I wrote high school musicals for my old school to start off with. Then I wangled my way into writing comedy for TV in Australia, like a variety style sort of show called Rove, which is a bit like Graham Norton. And then I came to the UK with my boyfriend, now husband, 10 years ago or so, with a handful of credits in Australia, but shows that no one had ever heard of over here. And it was through, I injured myself snowboarding, and through the chiropractor, her husband knew someone who worked on Fireman Sam and gave me their details. And I pestered them over emails, and they let me into the building, and I got a job somehow talked myself into a job on Fireman Sam.
And how did you get the idea for Kangaroo Beach? I mean, what sparked it? How did it all begin?
Well, I was lying on Bondi Beach in Australia, and I was about to return. I was on holiday there. I was about to return to London, and it was summer in Australia, and I was going back to the dead of winter in London. And I was lying on this beach feeling sorry for myself that I was going to miss out on all this. I was looking around at just the beautiful water and so many people having fun, and I realised it was the great setting for a TV series, and that there hadn't really been shows about the beach for kids. And my dad was a lifesaver back in Australia. I did a thing called Little Nippers, which is like a junior cadets program for little lifesavers. You're learning all about, water rescues and competing in carnivals and having loads of fun all summer. So I took that experience and, sort of put it into this idea for Kangaroo Beach, which is about 4 young animal friends who are doing a similar kind of program all summer while staying at the surf club and learning from their heroes, the adult lifesavers or lifeguards.
Could you please walk us through your journey of the development process, from creating scripts to the series Bible, and then, pitching that to broadcasters and various partners? How did you develop the idea?
Yeah, sure. It's a bit daunting. It was I developed a few sort of shows that hadn't really gone anywhere over the years, but I think by the stage I'd been working in kids for about 4 or 5 years. By the stage I started developing Kangaroo Beach, and I think all the experience that I'd had working on a lot of really successful shows as a freelance writer really helped me to start fleshing out a Bible that had all these juicy sort of characters that would have emotional storylines, which will help drive so many stories and work out, some of the great elements that make a successful kids show that have your kids tuning in every week or binge watching it. and all that sort of experience went into it. But it's really tough, as we all know as writers, coming up with something with from a blank slate, as opposed to writing as a writer on a show that's already up and running. And I think one of the best things I did was I hired a wonderful friend and collaborator, Jen Upton, who had been sort of my boss, I guess, at Disney when I wrote for some shows for Disney, and she'd gone freelance since and is a terrific script editor. And I did a day in her back shed where she's got a big whiteboard, and we sort of mapped out all the characters and sort of spitballed stories and scenarios, and it started to come to life like that. And then I was able to go away and rejig the Bible and write a pilot script, which really doesn't resemble anything like what the show is now. It just, you know what development's like. It comes leaps and bounds from that very first script. But basically I had a Bible and I had a script. I didn't do any pictures for this. Firstly, I can't draw. Sometimes I hire an illustrator to draw the pictures. But in this instance, I think I was a bit poor at the time. I didn't hire anyone. I just used photos of like kangaroos on beaches and some clips from Baywatch, because I was kind of pitching the show as like Baywatch for kids. So there was some David Hasselhoff in there. And then I started taking it round the traps, round to production companies around the UK, companies that I'd worked with. And that's usually the way, you pitch something, is you go to the production companies first, and then they might take it on board and then pitch it to broadcasters with you at a later date. But what happened with this was an executive at a production company that I pitched it to ended up changing jobs and becoming a big honcho at ABC in Australia. And so now he's on the broadcasting side of things, and he told me from that job how much he liked the show idea, and suddenly I had an interested broadcaster. So it was dumb luck again that happened, and I was then able to, after that, to go and find a production company in Australia called Cheeky Little Media to take on the show and bring it to life.
What was the process like for coming up with the variety ideas for the series that were fun but also included important messages? For example, when it came to coming up with episode ideas, did you have a list of water safety topics that you wished to cover that then dictated the episodes? I mean, like, how did that work?
Yeah, I started the show, I was sort of inspired by Fireman Sam a little bit. I remember the producer on Sam reading out some letters from kids or parents of kids whose children had reacted the right way to an emergency situation thanks to lessons that they learned on Fireman Sam. And at the same time, I was very aware that there's just these awful statistics of drownings across Australia every summer and across the world, in swimming pools and rivers and lakes, and very, very tragically, children are often involved. And I felt if I could bring some of that Sam sensibility to the show, as well as being first and foremost rollicking entertainment, Kangaroo Beach could help inform kids and their parents watching the show about some very necessary, possibly life-saving water safety messages. And at first, when I was writing, I mentioned the pilot script that I wrote earlier that bears no resemblance to the show. The water safety message, I knew very little about water safety, and it was about not eating within an hour before going swimming, which I think might be a myth, might not be right, but anyway, that was the message. Fortunately, when I started working with Cheeky Media, the producers there bought Hoppo, his name is Bruce Hopkins, who's the chief lifeguard at Bondi Beach, along with a triathlete champion named Craig Ridlington. And those two came on board as our water safety advisors. And they came to the writer's room and they just filled us with these amazing water safety messages that I couldn't believe at almost 40 years old. And as a dad, I didn't know. Stuff like the most important thing to do is stay calm and float if you're in trouble in the water, rather than panic and try and swim and use up all your energy. So that was a huge learning lesson. And as part of the writers' workshop, they took us out of the office and down to the beach. This was in Sydney. Put us on rescue boards, and then they led us into a rip. And then they showed us how the rip doesn't actually tug you right out to sea, but it naturally curves around and takes you back to the waves, which can then take you back to shore. So it was like learning hands-on from experience how the ocean works. So yeah, feeding those messages in was really important. And yeah, our job as a writer really is to sneak that educational stuff in amongst all the comedy and hopefully very engaging personalities and relatable characters that kids at home and the parents hopefully are really going to enjoy.
So diversity and representation is so important. How have you kept that alive in the show, like on the show and then also behind the scenes as well in making the show?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important to me. I have my own rule, which is that at least 50% female characters in the main characters. And yeah, originally when I was developing it, it was just a male chief lifeguard, and I was basing that on the realities in Australia where they are almost always male. But then I thought, that's silly. I've got my own show. I can make up the rules here. And so there's a male and a female chief lifeguard on the show, and the 4 cadets are evenly gendered. Whereas often, or maybe perhaps in the past, there'd be like 3 boys and 1 girl. Which is terrible for females. I know, having boy-girl twins, how important female characters are for my daughter. Really strong, and I want strong, funny, interesting, dynamic female characters, and that's reflected in the writing room as well, of having lots of great female writers. And I'm a gay dad, so that's something I like to see in my shows as well. We've got a Kangaroo Beach special coming up that'll be released about a year from now, I'd say, where we reveal Frizzy, our little koala girl, has gay dads. She's very show busy, Frizzy. She's a singer and a dancer. She's a triple threat. And it felt really fun that she's got gay dads, one who's a rugged mountain climber and one who's like a B-grade pop star. So it'd be really nice to introduce those to a preschool audience.
And what were the highlights and also the greatest challenges in creating and producing a series? I know that the show was predominantly made during the pandemic, but is there anything else you would do differently next time?
Yeah, it was a big learning curve because it was my first show. I realised just how much I would have sweat over it, and how, worried I would be if a script wasn't working or if a joke wasn't working. And I guess in my learning process was how lucky I was to be surrounded by such talented people, such wonderful voice actors and other fantastic writers working on it. The producers always had really good solid notes, and so did the broadcaster, which was a joy to get that. They always just were so proactive and made the episode so much better. So it's sort of learning to let my baby go a bit, and learning collaborating and realizing that was actually a really enriching experience for the show. So I can relax a bit now after that experience, just knowing how well episodes end up, and just they're much better than I ever imagined they could be, thanks to everyone's work on the show.
So I bet with writing there's good days and also there's some challenging days too. Like, how do you deal with bad notes and rejection?
Oh yeah, well, that's all us writers have got that, right? We have to have pretty thick skin. I remember early on in my experience as a writer getting notes on shows like Dennis and Nasher was one of the first shows I worked on. And some of the notes from Disney, they were really good notes. They were solid notes that were making the show better. But, when there's so many of them, you count the pages. Sometimes there's like 6-7 pages of notes on a 12-page script. And yeah, I can just remember slumping on the couch going, how do I get past this? How can I possibly move on to another draft and fix all these things? But I remember just rereading those notes and realizing that they're, it's throwing you a lifeline. There's actually really great ideas for making the episode even better, and so it's just working out how to sift those into the script. And at the end of the day, when you hand in a polish, I think you're usually pretty happy with it. And when you see it on TV, you can't believe how good an episode turns out once everyone else has worked their magic on it. But it can be tough. It can be really hard, and I still feel it even now. Especially with my own stuff now, I'm getting my own shows up and running. I just worry it's not going to be good enough, and it's going to go out on air and be seen millions of times, and just that stress of it being, just being not good enough. But Again, it's relying on a great team, and the people who are sending the notes always are coming from such a great place. And I cannot thank script editors enough. They've just been such a saving grace over the years. They're wonderful, wonderful people that are just there to support you.
Oh, you're right, Tim. Teamwork does make the dream work, and it is so exciting seeing it all come together at the end. So it's always worth it. So I guess, is it like having like a rocky spirit, just like you just keep going? So Tim, what's next for you, and what 3 pieces of advice could you give a writer who wants to create the first kids TV show?
Well, we've just finished writing the second series of Kangaroo Beach, so that's coming out later this year. We've got books out, and some merch, like clothes and swimwear and stuff, which is really exciting to see kids wearing them. And I've got a few shows that I'm developing of my own. A show based on my own family at the moment called Let's Go Bananas, which is looking like it could get up, fingers crossed, soon. And, you know, as with all us writers, there's plenty more things in the pipeline that I'd love to get up on screen. So the advice for other writers developing their own show. I think number one, I mentioned this before, is the script editor, and hiring a script editor. They are just brilliant. You just get so much out of them, and you're not sort of stabbing in the dark when you've got someone feeding you notes between premises and outlines and draft ones and so forth, and giving you notes on the Bible, and maybe even just someone to call up and have a chat and chew things over. I'd highly recommend, even if it's out of your own pocket, it's worth hiring a script editor. Second piece of advice is, I think, get loads of experience on other shows if you can, and learn from that experience, and also make connections with those production companies that you're working with. Hopefully you'll establish good relationships with the producers, because an animated series is going to take maybe a couple of years of working on it before it gets up on the screen. So you really want to get on famously with those people that are making it. And networking is part of that as well. Going to things like CMC, which is where I've made so many connections with other writers and with production companies and broadcasters that will be very fruitful if you've got a show up and running, or if you're pitching a show. So getting out there, meeting people. And finally, number 3, wear gold hammer pants is number 3. I remember pitching at CMC 6 years ago now, at the Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is session, and it was a show that was set in the 90s. So my co-writer Tony Cook and I dressed up in 90s clothes, and I found a pair of gorgeous gold hammer pants. It must have been somewhere on the dark web, and it was a really great pitch. The audience responded really well, and so did the Dragons. And I think making your pitch fun is what it's all about. It can be nerve-wracking, and a lot of pitching is done on Zoom these days, just like this interview today. And just try and make it fun for the broadcaster or production company that you're pitching to, because I imagine they just get so many pitches week in, week out. So give them a little bit of entertainment, a few gags if you can, and lighten their day, and hopefully they'll remember you and might pick up your show one day.
Oh, awesome. Tim, thank you so much for today. You've shared so much of your journey and wisdom, and especially the gold hammer pants. That's something I did not expect. That is so funny and great. Tim, thank you so much for today. And also thank you to everyone who's been watching online too. Just to let you know, there are actually 2 more interviews with writers and creators in the series on CMC, and 1 live session in real life at the Children's Media Conference. So if you're there in person, you can catch that. And that's not all. The Right Stuff is also running a session at CMC called Mentor Me, Mentor You, about mentoring programs for kids writers. Once again, Tim, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for everyone who's tuned in. My name's Dilpreet, and I hope you continue to have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.